Hello, my name is Dr. John Conoma. I'm the director here in the Centre for Deaf Studies in Trinity College Dublin, and today we're going to cover the Bachelor in Deaf Studies programme, B.ST.SU for short. You may hear a female voice in the background. This lady is an interpreter, and her name is Tracy Daly. Tracy will be interpreting or translating from Irish Sign Language into spoken English. I will sign more about the degree programme shortly. I would like to introduce you to our course coordinator. Her name is Carmel Graham, and Carmel is responsible for coordinating the programme. Here at the Centre for Deaf Studies, we pride ourselves on being the hub for Irish Sign Language. I'm sure some of you are wondering what exactly Irish Sign Language entails. Irish Sign Language is a language like any other ordinary language, whether that be spoken or signed. It's a language like any other language. However, its modality is different. We use signs rather than depending on sound. There are many different sign languages all across the world, in the same way that there are many different spoken languages. For example, English, Spanish, French, German, Russian. There are hundreds and hundreds of spoken languages, and in the same vein, there are hundreds and hundreds of sign languages. It's not a one sign language for every country across the world. Irish Sign Language is a full-fledged language with its own grammar structure and vocabulary, in the same way that any spoken language would follow their own grammar structures or rules. There are different grammar structures for Irish and English, and in the same vein, Irish Sign Language has its own grammar structure. Perhaps this may be a course that would interest you in the Centre for Deaf Studies. I encourage you to stay with me throughout the presentation to see if this is a course that may be right for you. When asking, is Deaf Studies the right course for you? Some points to consider would be the genuine interest in studying and learning Irish Sign Language and learning more about deaf culture and different aspects of the deaf community. You may wish to acquire an understanding of the deaf community as part of human diversity. We know that not everyone is the same. We all have different skills, abilities, talents, and when we look at the deaf community, those same skills and talents are present. It's a visual, powerful, vibrant community with ample opportunity to research and study. Maybe you envisage yourself as a working professional within the deaf community, as an interpreter or a teacher. There are many different strands and opportunities once our graduates finish from the Centre for Deaf Studies. Some have gone on to become audiologists, some have worked as interpreters, social workers, ISL teachers. I do need to explain that our course for ISL teachers is not similar to a regular teaching course. It's more about teaching through the means of Irish Sign Language from children right up to adults. There are many different strands and opportunities for you to choose from once graduating from the Centre for Deaf Studies. We would like to encourage all students to apply, regardless of whether they're deaf or hearing. You need no prior knowledge of Irish Sign Language before entering. We have some students who have absolutely no knowledge of sign language at all. Some potentially have grown up using Irish Sign Language due to the fact that their parents, friends or relatives may have been deaf. When all students arrive at the Centre for Deaf Studies, they all start from the same place. I quite like this quote. Sometimes you have to do what's best for you and your life, and not what's best for everyone else. It's important that you make the decision as to whether this course is for you. This is a 4-year degree programme. Upon completion, students will receive a Bachelor's Honours degree in Deaf Studies. Initially, students will focus on developing fluency in Irish Sign Language. This will happen over the period of our first 2 years, where students will focus on levels 1 to 4 of Irish Sign Language. This will coincide with different theoretical modules such as Linguistics, Sign Linguistics, Deaf Education, working with the deaf community, and many other modules. Once you reach the end of your second year, which pathway students take will be grade dependent. If a student decides to take the path of Irish Sign Language to English interpreters, ISL teachers, or Deaf Studies, those students must match the grade or standard necessary in order to gain entry. Other modules that will be covered, for example, Deaf Education and the history of Deaf Education, how that's developed to today. We'll focus on the social aspects of the community, whether that be clubs, drama, sporting events. We'll also focus on the cultural aspects of the community and the perspectives or attitudes in relation to the community. We'll focus on how the community are involved in the arts, involved in drama, the expressive communication that goes along with that. We will study sign linguistics and the development of language and how that differs from spoken languages. There are many different sign languages across the world, and we will delve into what that involves. Sign language is quite dependent on body movement and facial expression. If I were to give you an example of the word cold, you can sign it as if you were indicating your environment was cold, or you can sign it indicating from your nose that you're suffering from a cold. So you can see the difference. Even if we take cold and then take that a little bit further and develop that to the word freezing, the change in my body movement indicates the level of cold I may be feeling. I'm either cold, you can see on my face it's not too bad. You can see the exaggerated expression when I go to I'm colder or I'm freezing. It's an example of 3D communication where this communication is happening simultaneously, both the expression on my hand and the movement on my body. I don't need to say it's extremely cold. We will equally delve into the understanding of how deaf people are perceived. Some deaf people struggle living in a hearing environment and feel that they have to adapt in order to fit in, whether that be by the use of technology or the feeling of the need to speak. We'll speak about individual members of the deaf community. As I've mentioned earlier, there's so much diversity within any community. There's never one particular label to label a deaf person as such. We have deaf men, deaf women. We have members of the travelling community, people who've moved from different countries. We've some people who've grown up deaf. We've some people who have acquired deafness or become deaf by an incident in their life. There's no one shoe that fits all in terms of describing members of the community. We are a linguistic minority. Access to English most often for members of the deaf community is access to a second language. As I mentioned earlier, English is based on sound. Most people, like yourselves, potentially may take for granted the access to information that you would have on a daily basis, whereas that's not the case for the community. We'll equally focus on cultural aspects and how the community are perceived by the world. So that's a flavour of what we'll cover over the 4 years. This degree course is mapped to the national framework as a level 8. Entry requirements would indicate that for 2020, CAO applicants would need the equivalent of 340 points. This does vary from year to year. There are approximately 20 places available. 15 of those places come directly from the CAO, and 5 places are potentially held for mature students and students with disabilities. The 15 CAO applicants we have no control over. However, the 5 additional applicants, we carry out an interview process in order to assess their ability to be able to complete the course. Special entry requirements indicate that Leaving Cert students must attain a H4 in English. Some deaf students find themselves unsuccessful in gaining those points as English is their second or maybe third language. So the school is willing to accept an ordinary 6 or a H6 in any other language other than English. Like I said, that is a CAO decision. If students move from different countries, for example, the UK, the school will accept a GCSE level A or B for English or English literature. They will also accept the GCSE grade C in a language other than English. These are basic entry requirements in order to be accepted to the course. Across the 4-year programme, students will focus on many different modules. However, ISL is at the core of our focus. Students must develop a high level of competency in Irish Sign Language. Our language teaching is mapped to the Common European Framework of Reference to Languages, abbreviated to CEFR. There are different levels of achievement starting from level A1, A2, B1, B2, right up to C2. A1 would indicate that one would have the ability for everyday conversations, introductions, basic signs. As you continue to map yourself across the framework, as research would suggest, for receptive skills for second or third language learners, they would rarely attain a C2 level, potentially a B1, B2. And that, I suppose, there's a limit in terms of achieving fluency in second and third languages, and that would be the same across the board. Within the centre, students must pass their ISL modules. It's fundamental to students' understanding of the community and the requirements of the programme. We have a theoretical component to the degree. Our theoretical courses introduce you to modules like language acquisition and, for example, how children acquire language. What methods are used in terms of teaching? Equally, if a language delay is detected, what are the implications of learning language as a result of that? We'll focus on linguistics and the different aspects of Irish Sign Language in terms of movements, hand shape. We'll also focus on the grammar structure and the word order and the differences between English and Irish Sign Language. We'll delve into social policy in relation to education and the deaf community, and our understanding of both the deaf community in Ireland and worldwide. Each theoretical course roughly involves 2 hours of lecture time, plus there would be an expectation of self-study. We like to offer a blended approach whereby we have both lecture time and access to different resources, conversations, workshops. There are many different ways in which we carry out learning within the Centre for Deaf Studies. It's important to have both the theoretical and the practical elements within the course covered. We have a wide range of assessment strategies within the Centre for Deaf Studies. Some potential to film yourself signing live, written assessments, project-based assessments. Some may be required to write essays. Each individual requirement for each module will depend specifically on that module. For example, deaf studies would have a questionnaire to fill out online. Others may be expected, as I said previously, to write an essay or do some project-based work. Our method of assessment within the centre is quite varied and strives to match the student's learning style. We focus on continuous-based assessment throughout the 4-year programme. That includes the opportunity to engage in constructive criticism and feedback, specifically for interpreters and ISL teachers. It's important that you engage in that reflective practice, that self-assessment, and that constructive criticism enables you to progress throughout your studies. I know from my experience of teaching students over many years, those who engage in that kind of reflective practice and accept constructive criticism always turn out to be very good students, and those who are resistant to that may benefit somewhat less. I think this is important to remember. We also have end-of-term exams. I know that throughout the years we have changed and become definitely more diverse in how we offer assessments. Once students reach their 4th year, there is what's known as the capstone research project, which all students must take part in. All students are expected to carry out a research project and hand in a thesis on completion of their degree. We can talk more about that in the future. If you would like to contact us in relation to asking any further questions about the capstone research project, you can find our information in the links. Perhaps this is the course that you think you may enjoy. Maybe you think this course is right for you on the basis that you would like to learn how to communicate through Irish Sign Language, or potentially learning this language within a small group setting of in and around 20 people, meeting new friends and getting to know each other as opposed to an auditorium full of people, which we will have the opportunity to take part in. However, maybe you think that this aspect of a small learning environment appeals to you. If you think that that's the case, maybe this is the right course for you. As you can see from the select photographs that we've chosen today, there are many different options here. Often people ask us questions as to, when I graduate, what kind of opportunities would they be for me career-wise? As you can see at the centre of the slide, we have an interpreter working in the Abbey Theatre. We also have interpreters having the opportunity to work throughout other theatres in the country. Interesting to see how the interpreter has to reflect 5 different characters on stage and the level of work that needs to go into that. You see another picture to the right of that where we see 2 individuals standing outside the courtroom. This was the first deaf man selected to take part in a jury trial. However, on the day that the case was to take place, it was struck out as the accused had pleaded guilty and there was no need for the jury. However, recently I must mention that we have successfully had a member of the deaf community take part in a jury trial from start to finish. We also have interpreters working in courts for the deaf community, whether they be an accused or a witness. And the standard of competency needed in Irish Sign Language is quite high in order to carry out this work. We also see another photograph to the upper right of that where we see some of our students in class. I remember students arriving first at class and being quite taken aback at how quiet it was and how we weren't using our voices within the class. You see here also to the left we have interpreters working at government buildings and for government press releases, especially now in our most recent times through the pandemic. We've had more access to interpreters. You see myself central there interpreting for President Michael Higgins. It wasn't simultaneous, I need to add. I was sent the script and I translated it then afterwards. You can see here in government buildings in the Dáil we have interpreters working. There's a picture there of Enda Kenny, our previous Taoiseach, talking, and we have interpreters interpreting for him. All of these photographs show pictures of ex-graduates, or students rather, from the Centre for Deaf Studies. We have interpreters working in the Irish Deaf Society, which is a deaf-led organisation, and other examples of employment would be the Bridge Interpreting Agency and Chime. So here are just a snapshot of the opportunities that students can attain once they develop a competency in Irish Sign Language. You see here at the bottom there's another photograph where an interpreter is working within a medical setting, highly confidential, I must say, in addition to court work as well. Confidentiality is essential within these environments. But this gives you a flavour of the pathways that you can take once studying in the Centre for Deaf Studies. If you feel this is the right course for you, please do get in touch. Our contact information is on screen here. It indicates where we're located, gives you our website information. There you can gain more access to our handbook and contact information. You can send us an email directly to cdsinfo@tcd.ie, and you can also follow our Twitter account to see what activities are taking place. And I hope you enjoyed the presentation. Thank you.